Iran is a civilization with deep roots that has existed for hundreds of years. But Tehran was not an important city. The most important city in Iranian history was Ray. It was the capital of the Seljuk Empire. All investment was made here. While Ray was the center of the country, Tehran was just a small town. Tehran became the capital in 1786. There were two reasons for this. The first was security. Tehran is surrounded by mountains, making it an easy city to defend. The second reason was, of course, money. Tehran was close to both the Caspian Sea and Iran's internal trade routes. After becoming the capital, thousands of Iranians migrated to Tehran. Within just 10 years, the city's population had tripled. Magnificent palaces, grand mosques, and dazzling walls were being built. Tehran's destiny was changing, but it would have to wait several hundred more years to reach its true glory days. In 1921, Reza Pahlavi seized power in a coup. His first act was to add the title of Shah to his name. Shah Pahlavi wanted to transform Iran into a modern country. Tehran would be the showcase city of modern Iran. He literally demolished Tehran and rebuilt it. Many of Iran's ancient structures were razed to the ground. In their place, they brought in architecture inspired by Paris. Wide boulevards, modern government buildings, and even royal palaces were built. This is precisely why Tehran was called the Paris of the Middle East. Reza Shah Pahlavi remained in power for 16 years, but he was not a strong leader. Under pressure from the British, he handed over power to his son. The day Mohammad Reza Pahlavi was crowned, the fate of Tehran changed once again. Reza Pahlavi was a leader who was completely enamored with the West. He dreamed of Tehran becoming a magnificent capital city like Paris or London. He had a chance to make it happen. When he came to power, Iran's oil revenue was only $34 million. Thanks to the relationships he established with the West, Reza Pahlavi increased this revenue to $20 billion. This was an insane amount of money. They invested most of the money they earned in Tehran. Tehran wasn't the only city undergoing change. Once again, a wave of migration had begun. The city's population had exceeded 4.5 million. This transformation was one of the fastest urbanizations in history. Looking at the result, the plan had worked. Tehran had truly become a modern city like London or Paris. The photos on the left are from Tehran, while those on the right are from European capitals. Tehran lacked nothing compared to European capitals. Universities were being established, film festivals were being held, and even Hollywood stars like Elizabeth Taylor were buying homes in Tehran. This was the peak Tehran could ever reach. From this point on, it would never take another step forward. It would only fall downward. Reza Pahlavi, who transformed Tehran into the Paris of the Middle East, was forced to flee Iran with a handful of soil. A week after his departure, Ruhollah Khomeini took over the Iranian government amid an enthusiastic crowd. Tehran's glittering days were now over. Within just 10 years, Tehran would undergo the greatest cultural transformation the world had ever seen. The streets of Tehran, where parties had been held just a few weeks earlier, were now shrouded in silence. The first thing to flee Iran was money. Foreign countries withdrew all their investments after the revolution. Iran was subjected to a major embargo. They were prohibited from selling the oil that earned them billions of dollars. The biggest blow came from neighboring Iraq. In 1980, Saddam Hussein launched a war to invade Iran. At first, the impact of this war was not felt in Tehran. Tehran is a geographically safe city, but as the war dragged on, the people's welfare declined. Men began to be forcibly conscripted into the army. Investments that should have been made in Tehran were diverted to the war zone. Tehran had now become a poor city. In the 5th year of the war, Saddam Hussein also struck Tehran. The streets of Tehran, which had fallen silent after the revolution, were now noisy again. But this noise was not from music or laughter, but from sirens and cries. Saddam had deliberately targeted Tehran, not by mistake or accident. After seeing that damaging Tehran cornered Iran, he continued the attacks. For exactly 3 years, Tehran was the target of missiles fired from Iraq. There had been no proper investment for 5 years already. After the war, its infrastructure completely collapsed. Thousands of people were forced to leave Tehran and flee to safer cities. The war lasted about 10 years. A few months after the war ended, Khomeini died. Iran's future was now uncertain. Ali Khamenei, who came to power, was not a well-known figure among the people, but things would get better for Tehran. After the war ended, the city's infrastructure was strengthened. The number of parks increased from 70 to 180. Most importantly, the long-awaited metro finally opened. This meant a lot to Tehran. The orange trains running through the city seemed to signal that everything was returning to normal. Tehran has started to receive immigrants again. When the revolution took place, its population was only 5 million. By the 2006 census, it had surpassed 15 million. Today, it is estimated to be over 18 million. In other words, 1/5 of Iran's population lives in just one city. We can see this in most parts of the world. In Turkey, France, or Italy, most of the population also lives in a single city. For example, the population of Istanbul grew slowly over the years. Istanbul was able to prepare itself for this. The transformation was gradual. When you type Tehran into Google, this photo pops up first, a wide boulevard and a beautiful monument surrounded by greenery. This is the Parisian architecture that inspired the Shah, but this is not the real Tehran. Houses built on top of each other. Urban sprawl is so rampant in Iran that you can't even see the streets and avenues from the houses. But the houses aren't the only problem. Due to the population explosion in Iran, nothing is enough. Remember, Tehran was designed for 2 million people. When it suddenly reached 18 million, everything turned into chaos. Today, due to population density, most of Iran's pipelines burst. Water cuts, lasting for days, are being implemented throughout the city. These cuts are so severe that even schools in Iran were closed last week. Except for hospitals and government institutions, most homes are not receiving water. Iran's dams have fallen to their lowest level. A similar situation occurs during power outages. The grids are unable to cope with excessive usage. Most transformers are no longer operational. There is a significant energy deficit of 20,000 megawatts. When the power goes out, life in the country comes to a standstill. Water pumps, elevators, ATMs, even traffic lights. Don't dismiss traffic lights as insignificant. Iran is already very crowded. When traffic lights stop working, chaos ensues on the roads. While the average commute time used to be 1 hour, it rose to 3 hours. Hospitals are, of course, the places most affected by power outages. Even hospitals cannot provide full services except for life-saving interventions. Finally, geography. Choosing Tehran as the capital was a strategic decision. They placed great trust in the surrounding mountains, but those mountains have now become Iran's downfall. Air pollution has increased in Tehran due to its dense population. You might ask, what does this have to do with the mountains? Because of the mountains, a layer of hot air accumulates above the city. This layer prevents the pollution from dispersing into the sky. Iran is essentially living in a toxic gas. Last year, 4,460 people, or 12 people a day, died from air pollution. Think about your own country. You probably can't even imagine someone dying from air pollution there, but that's the reality in Iran. There is no water, no electricity, and the air you breathe is killing you. That is exactly what Iran is experiencing today. Tehran was a dream. A beautiful dream. It was supposed to be Iran's gateway to the world. It was supposed to be a modern city like Paris, London, or Istanbul. It was supposed to be a wonderful city that the whole world would envy for its architecture, infrastructure, and people, but it turned into a complete fiasco. Yesterday, Tehran's greatest dream was to be the Paris of the Middle East, but today it is in a much worse state than any other city in the Middle East.